The event just wrapped up, the big WWDC event, Apple's Developers Conference. A little bit different this year than usual. It took place online exclusively instead of with a live audience. It was a different experience for me watching it without the cheering, the crowd noise, the stage. This was much more of a production. And you were asking me earlier, you said, like, how do you think this went down? Was it better or worse? It was obviously a little bit more awkward. I think the whole group there was not necessarily used to presenting in such a way. However, I think it was actually better because it felt easier for me to get through the hour and a half thing because they were switching environments and all that. But a few important things took place. Probably the most important thing, in my opinion, is the switch over to Apple Silicon. So towards the end of the presentation, I think it was actually the very last thing. They saved it to the end, of course. Apple says, look, we've done all kinds of things here with the silicon on the iPhone, A-series stuff on the iPad. The iPad, they said the GPU performance 1,000 times more powerful than the iPad was a short period of time ago. They're very happy and proud of their developments in silicon. And then they go on to say, we're so happy, we're about to ditch Intel. Mm-hmm. I mean, Intel's not happy themselves. Apple's happy, Intel less so. Now, they did say, hey, we're going to continue to support Intel, and here's the various ways that developers can make sure they're safe across for the old Macs and the new Macs. But ultimately, what they're getting to is a greater integration of software and hardware all the way down to the iPhone and all the way up to their, workstation systems.
Convergence, yeah.
Yeah, and the same thing's happening in the software. After all, this is a developers conference, so they spend a lot of time on the software also. And it was the same idea. You saw the new Mac OS, Big Sur, they're calling it. And it looks to me heavily influenced from the stuff that's going on the mobile side. It was reminiscent of iPad OS to me. Granted, it's still different. It is still a desktop-first, desktop-oriented operating system. But these worlds are getting closer together. Mm-hmm. And who knows what the eventual destination is? Is it, I was talking to Kirk earlier, is the future of computing some sort of iPad-like thing that is then bolted on to various ergonomic components to suit the needs of that particular computing task? So if you're going to edit a video, you take your iPad-like slab and you slap it onto a stand. Mm-hmm. And it integrates with a keyboard and maybe a trackpad or a mouse. And then maybe the same slab can be ripped off the stand and then it goes to the couch, or it has a flippy keyboard style case where the computer portion is completely modular and it then integrates with all this external hardware to make it the thing that you need it to be. In order to do that, you need an OS that can go across that spectrum. And it's always been my criticism of the attempting to switch over exclusively to iPad OS in various experiments that have taken place on the channel in the past on Unbox Therapy. It's always you've always given something up, or at least I have. Mm-hmm. I would have some complexity with a very particular task where it wasn't exactly how it would be on a typical desktop environment. Now, if the whole thing converges and the experiences are seamless across the board, then all of a sudden, that comfort level, as you shift between these different modular setups, your comfort level is 100. And your expectations are the same across the board. So you, as a user, just feel better in general and get more done. Now, that wasn't the only thing. So Apple Silicon, probably the biggest. Intel stock falling off a cliff, I don't know, probably. You're the business guy, Will. What's happening to Intel right now? Let's get a stock update real time. They're up. What? Get out of here. Give me like a...
They're doing pretty good.
Yeah, what happened? Well, how did it jump up? Go to 5 days. Maybe 1 month is not looking good. Look, do like a year. Let's see a year on the chart. Interesting. Well, here's the thing. Maybe the markets were curious about how fast Apple could move to its own silicon. Or maybe as far as the, customers are concerned, maybe Apple isn't that big of a customer anymore because they have moved so many users onto iPads and things like this. But they did. So here's the key. As far as this is concerned with the transition, they're putting out the very first desktop-based A-series system is going to be called the Developer Transition Kit. It will be a Mac Mini enclosure with an A12Z SoC, 16 gigs of memory, 512 gigabyte SSD, Mac OS Big Sur Developer Beta plus Xcode. This is not going to be a commercially available product, this transition kit, obviously, hence the name, developer in the very front there. That's going to come at a later date. So maybe the markets are, that as far as Intel is concerned, maybe they're saying, oh, and you know, at the end of it, Cook made that statement. He said, yeah, in the meantime, we're going to launch some other Intel-based Macs. Remember that part? So maybe there's a few more Intel purchases to be made prior to this shift over, when some people could have been predicting possibly that this transition would be speedier than that. But when it comes to development, being a developer, developing things, you kind of want to future-proof a little bit. You need to be aware well in advance of these types of changeovers. And in particular, the advantages that Apple's going to have once they shift over to this A-series thing exclusively, all of a sudden now natively, when you're programming, developing for iPad apps, iPhone apps on the Mac, as you would be currently and into the future, now you're previewing these things in real time natively, the mobile stuff right on your Mac with this developer transition kit, or eventually the commercially available A-series laptops, desktops, and so on. But it does look like it's a little bit away.